Hey guys, how's it going? It is your boy, Manga Man Drew, and I'm here to do my manga breakdown for My Hero Academia, Season 6, Episode 9. So, let's dive right into this episode and break down what we got. So, in this episode, we cover the rest of Chapter 282, which are pages 5 through 17, as well as the entirities of Chapters 283, 284, and 285. To start off the episode, we saw what we saw at the end of Season 6, Episode 8, with Aizawa being hit with the eraser bullet, as well as Aizawa's probably best scene in this entire war of him cutting off his own leg. And I can say that this is most likely more reminiscent of the redraw of Aizawa cutting off his leg instead of what we got in the original part of the manga, the original draft, with it being very unnoticeable that he actually cut off his foot. And I will say that they do this scene justice, even if it is slightly censored, with the actual moment of him cutting off his foot being color shifted and color changed to hide the gruesomeness of this scene. And from there, we also get another moment of Aizawa being attacked by Tomura in this moment, and there seems to be a point of clarity in this moment. Because there was this argument and this idea that in the manga, Shigaraki Tomura was able to break through everyone by using his sheer power alone. But we see in the anime that most likely in the moment that Aizawa's eye blinked or was about to close, erasure was temporarily disabled on Tomura in that moment, and he was able to use a shockwave to blast himself forward to actually attack Aizawa in this moment. So it's cool that we saw a little bit more clarification in that moment, as well as we get to see another added scene that wasn't in the manga of Aizawa from his point of view, seeing Shigaraki literally scratch up and claw his face right before Shoto sends him flying with the ice blast. As well as we also get another slight added scene of Shigaraki decaying the ice right before Deku comes to attack him, which is not in the manga and was added in the anime. And then when it comes to this episode as well, there is the reveal of Tomura Shigaraki's body finally being fully recovered, with everything about his body being healed except for the fingers on his left hand, I believe. And then this is something that I really wanted to bring up that I mentioned in the last breakdown, which is the idea of what's going to be going on with Shigaraki's arm that was very much destroyed before he got the regeneration ability. And we see in this episode that it doesn't really matter, that most likely it is going to be a mistake and that it isn't going to really affect the story moving forward, because we see that his arm is completely healed, so nothing is really going to change from that part, and that it's most likely going to be a mistake and could potentially be corrected when the actual season of My Hero Academia comes out on DVD and Blu-ray. And something else I want to bring up is that we do get a slight change from the manga to the anime when it comes to how the students are reacting to the fact that Gigantomachia is going on a rampage and destroying a whole bunch of cities. And that change is that they are viewing the phone and the news in the manga when it's vertical, but in the anime, it's being done so in the superior form of horizontal. So yeah, small thing I wanted to bring up that you probably would not have noticed. And speaking of Gigantomachia, we do get a little bit more added scene, seeing more heroes trying to fight against Gigantomachia before we cut over to seeing what the students are doing at this moment, where we get to see the kids' reactions as well as some added scenes of Gigantomachia's rampage, where we do get a little bit more information and added scenes involving the students, with a new line of dialogue from Sero asking if Tokoyami is alright, as well as an added scene that shows a mini flashback to what happened before the entire medical base got destroyed by Gigantomachia's rampage, and how we actually get to see Tokoyami saving these people a little bit more in comparison to what we saw in the manga. But overall, I think that this scene was done fairly well when it comes to the students being rescued by the other pro heroes in the rampage against Gigantomachia. And how we do get an added scene of potentially the death of Majestic as he's congratulating the students for what they have done, as we see Gigantomachia comes in and smacks him away. And going from the students' reaction to this entire situation, we also get to see how the doctor himself is reacting to this entire situation as we cut back over to the action of Tomura Shigaraki versus the other heroes. And how we do get another very memorable moment from the manga in this episode of as Tomura is about to attack, we see that his body begins to rip open by the fact that his body hasn't fully recovered and that the strain that the heroes have put on his body before hyper regeneration is taking effect in this moment. And how Deku begins to make very much similar parallels between him as well as Shigaraki, which is most likely going to be building up to what we're going to be getting in the next episode and what Deku is going to be thinking about Tomura in that moment. And something else that I want to bring up is an added line in the anime about when Tomura is asking about what time or what day it is, as it's followed up by a new line of dialogue saying if it's been 4 months. Because at this moment, he wouldn't have no idea what time it is or how long he's been in that tank, and we know for a fact that it's only been around 2 to 3 months, or in the anime, about a month or 2. And along that line of line changes and line additions, we also get a change in the line when it comes to when Shigaraki is about to decay the ground. He talks about how his regeneration is not working, while in the manga, it's specifically stated that it is working and that it doesn't really matter because he's still going to activate decay. And here's probably my favorite moment of this entire episode, which is the reveal of the 7th user's quirk, Nana Shimura's float. And how in the anime, they add some extra flourishes to it by having it actually appear on the screen as the 7th user's quirk in this rainbow coloring and pretty much announcing that this is float, or that this is Nana Shimura's quirk that Deku is using in this moment to be able to fly in midair. So there are tiny things like that that I really enjoy about My Hero Academia anime, especially this season, and how we're going to be getting even more of those flourishes within the upcoming episodes, hopefully. And another flourish that I want to add is just this one panel where we get to see Deku with darker and thicker outlines, which makes him look very much like the intros to this season, as well as a more traditional comic book hero character as seen in America. And now we've reached the more action-oriented part of this episode of Deku versus Tomura Shigaraki. And let me just say that when it comes to some of these attacks and some of these blows, they're not as impactful as they were in the manga, which may come from the fact that when it comes to the anime and the manga, that there is a distinction in art style between Horikoshi's drawing and the drawings on the screen, and how there are most likely many times in the anime where they cannot fully convey the same emotions and same action as seen in the manga. But even so, they do come close a very few times, especially when it comes to some of the more flourishes of the animation, of it being more bombastic and brighter in comparison to what is seen in the manga. And all of this also includes some more added action that wasn't in the manga that we can only really get in the anime. And as we've gotten this moment of Tomura Shigaraki's fight with Deku, we focus a little bit more on Bakugo, and we also get to see the flashback of Bakugo and Deku training to unlock and learn about Float, where we get to see that both Froppy, Uraraka, and Sero are there to help Deku learn about Black Whip and learn how to use it better, alongside of beginning to master Float. And as the purpose of this flashback seems to be showing Deku actually training to unlock Float and be able to use it effectively even in the midst of battle, what is actually happening is that we're getting a lot more development from Bakugo as a character and his relationship with Deku, how we viewed Deku over the years, also setting up for something that we're going to be getting later on down the line, potentially in this season, or at least towards the beginning of the next season. And along with the stuff that we get with Bakugo and his development, we also do get a small change in All Might's dialogue. How in the manga, he's comparing Bakugo's change with Endeavor and how Endeavor began to realize and recognize his changes and his changing ideals after All Might failed. But in the anime, All Might is the one recognizing that he didn't really understand himself until he failed, which is a change because it gives All Might a little bit more development and show that he has been growing and developing after his fall at Kamino. Which in reality, I think that this is a good kind of change that the anime can make to the manga if it actually adds on to another character while not necessarily taking away from someone else. And as we finish that flashback, we see Deku once again continuing to destroy his body to try and defeat Tomura Shigaraki. And then we get a moment that I always remember from this arc for how impactful it is from how I read the story of My Hero Academia. which is when Rocklock is trying to prevent Bakugo and Shoto from interfering in the fight, but then he remembers that he already accepted that Deku is a hero a long time ago. And the reason why I like this type of aspect of the story is that it's emphasizing the idea that even though these kids are kids, they are first and foremost heroes, and that age is not a factor when it comes to heroics. And that this just ties into the grander themes of what it means to be a hero, which is that age isn't a factor. As long as you have a true heroic spirit, you are a hero. And we're approaching the end of this episode, where we get to see that as soon as they reach the air, Endeavor is able to use a prominence burn on Tomura Shigaraki, which leads to some changes and some additions that I really liked that I was not expecting. One of the changes is that when All For One takes over Tomura's body, we get a transition scene in the vein of a television or old school television being turned off, as we switch perspectives to All For One stabbing Endeavor with his rivet stabs and trying to aim and get One For All from Deku. And as that happens, Bakugo goes and tries to save him, as we get a massive moment from him in this episode. And how this moment ties once again into that moment ties a little bit more into the added scenes of the transition between Tomura and All For One, with Bakugo coming to a realization that he is moving on his own and that he's beginning to reflect on his history with Deku. And as that is happening, we actually see it from the perspective of watching it on a television screen, which I think that is a cool addition to really show these flashbacks in a more unique way, as well as emphasizing the fact that he's moving on his own, which is the trait of a true hero. I also want to point out the potential new move that Bakugo uses in this episode, where we get to see his explosions coming out that rockets him forward to actually help and save Deku, and how it's more of a rainbow coloring. I kind of like that because it shows that there is going to be a distinction between this power-up versus something that Bakugo was able to use prior, which was just normal explosions. And that this is going to be adding to a future scene and make it a lot more beautiful and a lot more impactful with that color distinction if they continue to keep it later on in My Hero Academia's running in the anime. And from here, this is where we get the end of the episode with the final title drop of Bakugo Katsuki Rising, as the title appears on the screen at this moment and the episode ends. And from there, we have one final change, which is that when we get to the ED, there is some added scenes that are added when it comes to Bakugo and Deku. And the change is within the same scene where we saw a change with Toga, which is that we get a scene of Bakugo as a kid having a hand stretched out to him, and that arm is most likely a reflection of Deku reaching out to try and help him. But then there is another scene of this exact same moment flipped, but Bakugo is a lot older, and is most likely still a younger Deku reaching out to save Bakugo in this moment. And this may be a reference to the manga cover of volume 29 of My Hero Academia, which is just Bakugo on the cover with Deku stretching out his hand to save him, in the same vein that Deku did when they were kids when Bakugo fell in the river. I really love the fact that they are not afraid to be changing the endings of the My Hero Academia anime, because this is not something that they really do a lot, nor did they really do prior to the season. So I'm glad that they're trying new things and changing it up a little bit more, and it's really exciting. And that potentially in the next episode, there's going to be a potential change to the opening as well, but we're just going to have to wait and see when I break down that episode. So yeah, that's pretty much all of the things I really want to talk about when it comes to my breakdown for My Hero Academia. There's only one thing that I really want to add, and that is some cut scenes from the manga that are not in the anime. From what I've seen, there are not that many, only 3 that I have personally found. But once we get a cut few panels where we get to see a more up-close shot of Sun Eater and Fat Gum actually attacking or in the confrontation with Gigantomachia. Another scene that is cut of the Paranormal Liberation Front members in the streets going after Gigantomachia and causing havoc. And finally, a more or less an entire page that is cut of Mirko showing that she is alive and that she's being carried away somewhere to be healed. So even though these scenes are most likely cut from the anime, they do not take away from the actual anime itself, nor does it take away from the story. But yeah, this is my breakdown for episode 9 of My Hero Academia. So what did you think of the episode? Did you like it? Did you dislike it? And was there anything that I missed in this breakdown? Leave your thoughts down in the comments down below. Leave a like on the video if you liked it. And don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel for more content like this. Do all that cool jazz. And hopefully I'll be able to catch you in my next video. Goodbye!